up now! Run, you stupid bastard! It's going to explode!
Munich, 1958. 23 dead, including some of the most talented sportsmen on Earth.
We were really big time.
Ready for takeoff.
You could really not expect to have a better crew flying that Manchester United team.
105, V1.
The crew had not had the wings de-iced.
The pilots know what they're doing, boys. Christ, we're not going to make it.
I thought it was dead.
Blame for the tragedy would fall on one man.
That is one hell of a burden to take on.
And he was devastated by this.
The effort to clear his name would span more than a decade and pit one nation against another in a bitter struggle for the truth behind one of the worst tragedies in the history of sport.
Mayday, Mayday.
February the 6th, 1958. Munich Airport, West Germany. A British pilot prepares to bring home an extraordinary group of passengers. The Manchester United football team. In the 1950s, they are the most famous sportsmen on the planet.
Everyone in the huge Wembley crowd, from the Queen to the oldest fan, is tense with excitement.
Manchester United is probably the most premier team, most famous team this country had ever seen before.
I joined the club in December of '57.
Harry Gregg is the team's star goalkeeper.
We boarded the aircraft, which was a charter flight. We were really big time.
After playing a key game in Yugoslavia, the team has advanced to the semi-final of the prestigious European Cup.
The aircraft had to stop in Munich because it didn't have sufficient range to get back to Manchester from Belgrade without stopping to refuel.
The 21 players and staff are traveling in style. They're aboard a British European Airways Airspeed Ambassador. It's a luxurious twin-engine aircraft, also known as the Elizabethan. The captain is 36-year-old James Thain. He's a former RAF pilot with an impeccable service record.
He was quite a remarkable man. He was very upright and honourable, very strong character.
The weather had been pretty grim throughout the day. Snowfall in the morning gave way to a rising of temperature to just above freezing.
As Captain Thain finishes his pre-flight inspection, the young sportsmen settle in for the journey home.
They were notable for the fact that their manager, Matt Busby,
I'd like the lads to get a good night's sleep.
was picking relatively young players in the team, and that's why they were known as the Busby Babes.
Busby's Babes start the second half in cracking form with that slippery winger, David.
We're a young and wonderful team, which I'm very proud to have been part of.
I'll give you guys a chance to get your money back once we're in the air, boys, all right?
Travelling with the team are 11 of the UK's best-known sports journalists, eager to report on Manchester United's latest success. Also on board are a few Yugoslavians catching a ride to the UK. 38 passengers in all.
How's she looking out there?
Oh, snow build-up's minimal. No need to sweep. Take us home.
Happily.
38-year-old co-pilot Kenneth Raymond is a World War II ace. He is also an Elizabethan captain and is in fact senior to Thain at the airline.
They were both highly experienced pilots. You could really not expect to have a better crew flying that Manchester United team.
They were great friends, and of course they were captains together, and they flew together quite often.
Raymond and Thain have agreed that on this flight, they will switch seats.
Because Captain Raymond was going to be handling the aircraft and he would be used to handling the aircraft from the left-hand seat, that's why he sat in the left-hand seat.
Port and starboard fuel cocks on, crossfeed off.
It's against company policy, which states the commander should always sit in the left seat. But it's a rule that is frequently broken.
1 inch open.
Throttles, port and starboard, levers, 1 inch open.
Carb air, port and starboard ram.
Carb air, port and starboard ram.
Ignition boost switches off.
Ignition boost switches off.
Munich, 609, Zulu uniform. I am ready to take off.
Beeline 609, your clearance expires at 3-1. Time now is 3-0. Cleared for takeoff. Right turn out.
Thank you. Rolling.
In light snow, with the temperature hovering around freezing, Thain and Raymond start their takeoff run.
Full power.
Full power.
I'd been reading a book that one of the lads had passed to me. I was reading that, and we sat off down the runway, and I looked out the window. No big deal at all.
Temperatures and pressures okay. 90. 100.
Takeoff speed is 119 knots.
Abandon takeoff.
But suddenly I watched the wheels lock and unlock, and the plane started to spin. We stopped slightly side on.
Sorry about that. Engine fluctuating.
609, we are abandoning the takeoff.
Tower, please say again.
We are abandoning the takeoff. May we backtrack? Over.
Engine boosting.
I would think so, yes.
The problem was with boost surging, it happened with that particular engine on that particular aircraft. It was Bristol Centaurus engine. It was prone to doing this, especially at airports which are at high altitudes. And one of the problems was that the thrust sometimes was opened too fast.
609, clear to backtrack.
The Elizabethan taxis back to the start of the runway for a second takeoff attempt.
I truthfully can say I was not too perturbed at all. Another adventure for a young man, and I was not a bad flyer at that time.
Munich, 609, Zulu uniform. When we get to the end of the runway, I should like to take off again. Is the clearance still valid?
609, your clearance is still valid.
Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize, but we are heading back to try again.
Back to the beginning. Sat, revved up as one would do, revved, and then they took the anchors off, and I paid more attention this time.
Slightly further along the runway, the same thing happened again.
Port is off the clock.
This time it was Thain who actually abandoned that takeoff.
And again, when I thought we were about to lift, I watched the wheels lock and unlock, lock and unlock. You gotta stop.
The Munich 609 Zulu uniform. We are abandoning this takeoff as well.
Roger. Clear to backtrack.
And the pilot came on and said,
Sorry for that. We have a technical fault that we're now looking into. We're returning to the terminal for further checks. Nothing to be alarmed about, and we hope to have you airborne shortly.
Don't stray too far, boys.
we'd return to the terminal and everybody would disembark.
Bill Black, the station engineer, had seen these two aborted takeoffs and obviously clattered up the steps, put his head through the cockpit and said, well, what's going on? Why haven't you taken off?
We've been getting a boost surge in the port engine. Up past 60 last time.
They received an explanation that this was a fairly common phenomenon when operating the Elizabethan from Munich because of the high altitude, that it was nothing to worry about, and they were given advice when advancing the throttles, if they got the surging, was to just retard the surging engine slightly, reduce power, and then take it up again to full power more slowly.
Passengers for BEA 609, please proceed to the tarmac.
Within 5 minutes of the passengers being offloaded, they were loaded on again. And then it was a surprise to them. They've had 2 aborted takeoffs, and now they're asked to go back again.
If one person had said, this is crazy, we're not going, he would have had a whole lot of followers. But there you are, human nature again. Who's got the moral courage? But who likes to admit to being a coward?
BEA Flight 609 prepares for its 3rd takeoff attempt from Munich Airport. The plane carrying the Manchester United Football Club is drawing attention from inside the terminal.
You've got to remember, these are the Busby babes. They're laughing and joking all the time, that sort of thing. But now they're quite quiet, and there's a lot of tension there in the air.
Little Johnny Berry, he said, we're all going to get frickin' killed here. And Liam Whelan said, well, if it happens, I'm ready. At that point, I opened my tie.
Ignition boost switches off.
Ignition boost switches off.
Wings still look good. No need to de-ice. Munich Tower, Beeline 609 Zulu uniform. I'm ready to taxi. Over.
Beeline 609, your clearance void, if not airborne, by 04, time now 02.
Roger, understand. Valid till 04.
Captain Thain has just 2 minutes before the window for takeoff closes. If this 3rd attempt is not successful, the flight may be cancelled and his famous passengers will be grounded in Munich.
Munich 609 Zulu uniform is ready for takeoff.
Roger.
The runway is more than 1,900 meters long, even with their plan for a gradual acceleration. The Elizabethan should be able to lift off just past 1,200 meters.
So for the 3rd time that day, they actually lined up the aircraft with the centre line, got the permission, clearance to take off, and they're away.
Full power.
Full power. Temperatures and pressures okay. Port surging slightly.
He experienced a bit of this engine surging, which he retarded the throttle slightly and then advanced it again.
Full power again.
Both engines sound an even note, and we're going down the runway now for a takeoff. Everything seems okay.
The pilots know what they're doing, boys.
I thought, there's more people in this plane more frightened than what I am.
.105. V1.
Velocity 1 is the speed at which a takeoff cannot safely be abandoned. The point of no return.
Raymond now is waiting, is anticipating now Thain to call out 119 knots, which is V2.
At 119 knots, the plane can become airborne. But something goes wrong. They suddenly lose speed.
Christ, we're not going to make it!
There was no screaming, there was no shouting, there was nothing like that at all. Darkness and daylight and sparks and thumps, smacks. You just can't describe it. And then it was just complete and total darkness. I thought it was dead.
The Elizabethan has crashed through a fence, hitting a house and a fuel shed 300 meters beyond the end of the runway.
And eventually I got to my senses and I started to crawl uphill. And I got to a hole of what was left of the aircraft. And I honestly thought, I'm the only one alive here. And then I heard a shout.
Out! Everyone out! Now! It's going to explode! Out! Everyone
He shouted, run, you stupid bastard, it's going to explode.
Now! The plane could explode! Come on! Go, 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 go! Run, you stupid bastard! It's going
And
to
I
explode!
heard a child crying. I shouted, come back.
Come back, you bastards! There's people alive in there!
I went back in through the hole I came out of, and I found the little child. Went round the other side and found Matt Busby, the boss.
Busby's alive, but in shock.
He had a small cut behind his right ear, I remember it, but when I looked down, his foot was completely reversed round the other way.
Oh, my leg.
I jammed some rubbish up behind him because he didn't look too bad and left him propped up.
Harry Gregg pulls out one passenger after another, both living and dead.
A man must do what a man must do.
Within minutes of the crash, help begins to arrive from the airport and nearby farms.
The co-pilot is trapped up there! Can you help him? Yes.
Two German rescuers climb up on the wing and free Kenneth Raymond from the wreckage. He is badly injured. 21 people are dead. 7 are Manchester United players. The head coach, secretary, and trainer are also dead. 7 more team members are seriously injured. Manager Matt Busby is in critical condition. Manchester United, one of the world's greatest football teams, is effectively wiped out.
What started out as a wonderful thing sadly went wrong.
Near Munich, a fierce blaze marks the wreck of a British airliner.
We had this pretty high-profile air disaster here. The stakes are quite high. Not long after the end of the Second World War, we've got 2 pilots who fly in the aircraft who actually flew in the RAF during the war. Yeah, and Munich, obviously, as well, was that place where the cradle of the Nazi Party. So you've got a British government, you've got a German government. Everybody was going to tread warily.
At 10 p.m. on February the 6th, 6 hours after the crash, the man assigned to investigate it arrives on the scene.
Hans Reichel was the West German chief accident investigator. He was quite experienced. He was 57 years of age. He'd flown with the Luftwaffe. He'd flown with Lufthansa, the national airline, so there's no doubt he was actually a qualified pilot.
This was the first major international accident that he had had to deal with.
In his role as air crash investigator, Steve Moss is re-examining the evidence from a 21st century perspective.
He certainly seems to have arrived at Munich rather under-equipped.
Kann ich bitte ein bisschen Licht haben?
To the extent that he had to borrow a news crew's lighting equipment to commence his examination.
Can I have some light here, please?
Of course, uppermost in his mind was the possibility of ice on the wings. So he went looking for that, and sure enough, he found it.
The wrecked aircraft was covered by a layer of snow about 8 centimeters thick. This could be brushed aside with the hand without difficulty. Under this, there was a layer of ice, frozen firmly onto the surface of the wing. Here.
Reichel finds the only surfaces free of ice are near the engines. He assumes the entire wing was coated in ice before the crash, and that during the takeoff attempt, the propellers blew away the ice behind them. The day after the crash, investigators take a closer look at the scene. They examine the tire tracks, which extend 50 meters and right off the end of the runway.
The information from the ground marks that the aircraft never got airborne must have, in Reichel's mind, reinforced this impression that ice on the wings was responsible.
Manchester, from the moment the news came through, was a city in mourning. While millions wait anxiously for news of the seriously injured men, the hospital staff worked day and night to save them. Matt Busby was their worst problem. For 2 days, he lay between life and death with one of his lungs completely deflated. Then came the welcome news: Matt was off the danger list.
6 of the 7 injured players also pull through. But the team loses one of its greatest stars.
Duncan had died. Duncan died, I think, 10 days. Yeah.
To this day, many regard Duncan Edwards as the greatest footballer the UK has ever produced. Co-pilot Kenneth Raymond also dies, having suffered a brain injury.
Full power.
Full power.
James Thain is left to face a wall of questions on his own.
Well, you see, on the first takeoff, we weren't completely satisfied with the engines.
Any little bit of information that the press could get, there was another headline. It was relentless. So it must have been very difficult for him.
2 days after the crash, Reichel interviews Thain.
After the accident, we established that the starboard wing had a layer of rough ice on it. The region of the propeller slipstream was free from ice.
When I walked out of the aircraft on the first attempt, I could see the snow thawing on the wings and count the ribs of the aircraft.
What did you say was the cause of the accident?
My personal feeling is that there must have been a large quantity of snow built up at the end of the runway.
Why were you sitting in the right-hand seat?
People began to speculate, even before the inquiry, about the cause of the accident.
2 months after the crash, in April 1958, a German inquiry formally gets underway.
Shall I begin?
The German investigation, straight away, it seemed to be into this adversarial role of somebody being on trial and having to prove his innocence.
They knew straight away that there's something going on here. He's on the rope straight away, right?
Hans Reichel draws on witness testimony of snow on the wings and Thain's own account that he did not de-ice.
And this is something that will not go away with Reichel. It's ice, ice, ice all the way.
The temperature the afternoon of the crash hovered around 0 degrees Celsius. It wasn't cold enough for the snow to create ice.
Thain saw the water actually dripping off the leading edge. So he knew the snow was actually melting, so obviously that convinced him again that it just didn't require de-icing.
But German experts note that the Elizabethan had just descended from 25,000 feet, where the air temperature was minus 25 degrees Celsius. They conclude that snow falling on the frozen wings would have turned instantly to ice. Thain counters with the testimony
De-icing on.
that he turned on the wing de-icing heaters on descent to Munich. That would have made the wings warmer, not colder than the air. Thain seems to have all the answers. But what he doesn't know is that Hans Reichel is about to present a controversial piece of evidence that will change everything. The German government inquiry of the Munich disaster takes a decisive turn with the introduction of a casual snapshot.
This was potentially a smoking gun because at first glance, looking at the photograph, it appeared to show a white area on the top of the wings, which certainly was interpreted as being a layer of snow or ice.
Every other aircraft that left Munich that day was de-iced, but not the Elizabethan. For investigator Hans Reichel, the crew's failure to de-ice is the leading cause of the accident.
Apart from this icing, I could find nothing which might have been a cause for the accident or to have contributed to it.
As for the house at the end of the runway,
clearly it was an issue because the aircraft struck it.
The impact and explosion did make the accident more deadly. But German authorities find that according to regulations, the house was a proper distance from the airport. Finally, investigators consider whether the engine boosting problem was a possible cause.
Port is off the clock.
The theory is quickly dismissed.
The boost issue had nothing to do with the accident. One of the engines was actually carrying a crude form of flight recorder, which indicated that during the run, the engines were certainly delivering enough power to get the aircraft airborne.
Während des knapp zweistündigen Aufenthalts in München,
in March 1959, a year after the tragedy of Munich, the German government releases its official report. It lays full blame for the accident at the feet of Captain James Thain.
Ice. Ice on the wings, which they say was there before the accident. Simple.
The German investigation also suggests that by agreeing to switch seats,
Take us home.
Captain Thain may have created confusion over which pilot was in charge.
And they said Captain Thain, he's the one responsible for the deaths of 23 people and the decimating the Manchester United football team. That is one hell of a burden to take on.
I think in terms of the press, obviously they like to have somebody that they can pin something on, and to that extent they saw him as a little bit of a villain.
He was definitely badly treated. He was made the scapegoat.
A year after the crash, James Thain's reputation is in tatters. The former RAF officer and accomplished commercial pilot is now a full-time farmer. The disaster at Munich haunts him constantly.
I can remember Mum and Dad sitting up for all hours of the night talking about this because Dad was convinced that there had been some external force that had affected the takeoff run.
Thain is certain that ice on the wings did not cause the crash. He decides to launch his own investigation.
Dad was a man of great integrity and fortitude, and he was determined that he would make sure that he found the cause of the accident.
But in 1959, there are almost no forensic tools at his disposal.
For a start, of course, an aircraft of that size would have the benefit of a flight data recorder, a black box flight recorder, and a cockpit voice recorder. And if we could have that information from the 1958 Munich accident, there would be absolutely no doubt about the cause.
V1. The plane reached 117 knots, but then slowed dramatically. Ice on the wings can't explain that sudden loss of speed. But something else can. Something Thain sees as the real cause of the crash. Slush on the runway.
So imagine you're driving on a dry road during the winter and you suddenly enter an area of slush.
Canadian aviation expert Terry Townsend specializes in the study of runway contamination.
Immediately you're going to notice resistance on the vehicle from the slush, and the same thing happens on the aircraft.
Thain believes other planes didn't have slush problems that day because they took off on the first 2/3 of the runway. Since the Elizabethan accelerated more slowly to compensate for the boost pressure problem, it rolled further into the unused part of the runway with deep slush.
It takes more power to overcome that slush.
Thain learns that 9 years earlier, a Trans-Canada Airlines plane failed to take off on a slushy Vancouver runway.
They did some research and found that as little as 5 centimeters of slush could really adversely affect the aircraft's ability to reach takeoff speed.
The Canadian government issued a letter of warning to all airlines. Do not attempt takeoff in more than 5 centimeters of slush.
It was sent to BEA, but for some reason, best known to themselves, they did not take any action on it and filed it away for future reference.
The German investigators have dismissed slush as a possible cause, insisting it was ice on the wings. But through his research, Captain Thain uncovers a shocking omission.
We quite fortuitously came across a witness who had made an inspection of the wreckage immediately after the accident.
Karl-Heinz Seffer was among the first at the scene, climbing up on the wing to help pull co-pilot Kenneth Raymond from the wreckage. He was later interviewed by investigators.
Ich kletterte über den rechten Flügel hinunter. Mir fiel kein Eis am Rumpf oder am Flügel auf. Ich trug Gummistiefel. Da war kein Eis, sonst wäre ich ausgerutscht.
But when this report was read out to the first German Commission, only part of it was read out. That part which included the evidence that he couldn't find any ice was left out.
All this was set up, it was all stage managed, you know, Thain was going to be made a scapegoat, it was going to be ice on the wing, it wasn't going to be runway contamination.
That's in spite of eyewitness accounts from the air traffic controllers, which also supported the slush theory.
Beeline 609, your clearance expires at 3:1. Time now is 3:0.
The most crucial eyewitnesses saw the aircraft start the takeoff run as normal. About halfway down the runway, they saw the nose lift, which would be standard procedure. But then, unusually, they saw it go back down onto the runway, which of course should not happen.
This crucial eyewitness evidence was also omitted at the inquiry.
It's quite notable that the air traffic controllers that were called as witnesses were the trainee ones, and that the qualified ones weren't called.
The only person to testify about slush on the runway was the Munich airport manager. He said he inspected the runway and found the slush was less than a centimeter deep.
Slush can be difficult to measure because it can vary significantly in height across the runway. The slush can be 1 centimeter high in one place and it can be 10 centimeters high in another. So a number of samples have to be taken in order to get a reasonable average.
Also in question is Reichel's conclusion about ice on the wings. That it must have been there before takeoff, since the only areas without ice were behind the propellers where it blew off. A scientific challenge to this view comes from a most unlikely source. Captain Thain's wife, Ruby.
She was a remarkable lady, being one of the first women to get a first-class honours degree from Bristol in chemistry, physics and maths.
A trained chemist, Ruby Thain points to the massive amount of fire-extinguishing chemicals sprayed on the burning wreckage.
Actually thought about this very carefully, and she obtained a sample of fire extinguisher powder, which turned out to be sodium bicarbonate, which is common baking powder. So she would go out and sprinkle it on the metal car thinking it might simulate an aircraft wing, and found that if that mixed with snow and water, that this solution would freeze at a lower temperature than that was recorded at Munich that night.
Firemen trained their hoses mainly on the engines. Ruby's experiment could explain why ice did not accumulate in those areas, but did build up on the rest of the wing in the hours after the crash. With new eyewitness testimony and compelling scientific evidence, another side of the story begins to emerge.
If it's ice on the wings, it's the captain's fault. He is to blame.
V1.
Of course, if it's slush on the runway, then really it's the airport to blame.
Thain submits the new evidence to the German authorities, but they refuse to reopen the investigation.
It's nonsense.
In 1961, BEA officially fires Thain, primarily for violating the company's policy against pilots switching seats.
Well, they sacked him, and he was devastated by this, for something which was effectively a little company regulation, but other people did that as well.
BEA, obviously, if you think about it, did not want a pilot like that on the flight deck. As they're about to take off, this is your captain speaking, Captain Thain, I'm the one responsible for 23 deaths at Munich in 1958, so no airline wants that.
A conviction of convenience, it didn't matter who they hung out to dry, and he was hung out to dry.
The loss of his job makes Thain more determined than ever to clear his name. He writes letter after letter to both the British and German governments, urging them to reopen the investigation. In 1965, those efforts pay off.
Ja, Schatz, ich bin fertig.
German authorities agree to review the investigation of the Munich disaster.
Initially, with the second German inquiry, it was felt that, yes, there could be a glimmer of hope.
That hope has been stirred by some new research.
Tests into slush carried out at Busby.
Britain's Royal Aircraft Establishment has conducted slush tests on the Elizabethan aircraft.
Basically, they flooded a runway to varying depths and simulated a takeoff run using an Ambassador aircraft. The results of these tests were quite alarming.
In run after run, the plane decelerates from 117 to about 105 knots. The same loss of speed reported by Thain.
We're hoping that when the Germans have considered, if they consider all the relevant evidence, we shall get them to reach the conclusion that the aircraft accident was due to slush on the runway and not ice on the wings.
But at the two-day hearing, Reichel is not swayed by the new evidence. Instead of clearing Thain, he condemns him further, saying that by switching seats, the captain actually made things worse.
The differing assessment of the situation by the two pilots probably increased the severity of the accident.
Christ, we're not going to make it!
As an investigator these days, I can see no technical reason why that should have contributed to the accident.
The damning findings of the German Review Commission are a crushing blow to Thain.
The British government knew, the airline knew, Thain certainly knew he'd been set up, but nothing was done.
But in a strange twist, he's about to get one last chance, thanks to Britain's most powerful politician.
100,000 expectant fans packed the stands to see great football. The Busby Babes were raring to go.
In 1967, Harold Wilson is Prime Minister of the UK. After attending a Manchester United game, he makes a comment that sets off a media frenzy. He says he believes James Thain was a victim of injustice.
became another headline, "The fight goes on."
Harold Wilson, he knew enough that Thain was innocent, and he really took it on. It was debated in the House of Commons, and then it went ahead, and this was the most thorough inquiry yet.
In 1968, British investigators conduct a study to determine whether slush or wing ice caused the Munich disaster. Their findings immediately call into question the accuracy of the two German reports. Photographic analysis shows that the white on the wings is not snow. It was merely light reflecting off a wet surface.
A new picture was taken from the original negative, which showed clearly that the markings on the aircraft, so there couldn't have been ice.
As well, 3 separate experts determined that the amount of ice Reichel found on the wings, 5 millimeters, would not have been enough to prevent takeoff.
I don't see how a layer of ice, even 5 millimeters thick, could account for a deceleration of the aircraft.
Then the British inquiry takes a dramatic turn when a star witness appears, Reinhard Meyer, a pilot who was first on the scene of the crash.
Ich ging hin und untersuchte den Flügel des Flugzeugwracks und bemerkte nichts in der Art von Frost oder angefrorenen Ablagerungen, nur schmelzenden Schnee.
It turned out when he was called to give evidence, he said, well, I spoke to Reichel personally, face to face, and told him what had happened, that I'd gone to the aircraft, I'd looked for ice immediately after, within minutes of the crash, and I found no ice, just melting snow only. And that was it. So everyone was astonished at this.
Reichel has no explanation for the glaring omission.
I think he found it very difficult to back down and say, actually, I was wrong.
Slush on the runway is going to be the German airport authorities' fault, and they're not going to accept that.
In March 1969,
good news,
11 years after the crash,
finally,
the British government formally clears James Thain.
Well, of course, my family are very pleased indeed.
Well, he knew that obviously this was the right findings, and he was very pleased and happy because in this country he'd been exonerated.
But BEA does not give him his job back. Captain Thain never flies again. In Germany, Hans Reichel and the aviation authorities never exonerate him.
I think there was a huge amount of stress and strain and tension, and he died a young man. He was 54.
At Munich, there were 23 victims, and Captain Thain was the 24th.
10 years after the accident that killed 8 of its players, Manchester United becomes the first English team to win the European Cup.
At last, Matt Busby, the maestro of Manchester United, had groomed a team great enough to beat Europe's best.
A cup they might have won in 1958, if not for an aviation disaster that devastated the finest team of players Britain had ever assembled. Harry Gregg continued playing for Manchester United until 1967. Now in his 70s, he dwells only on the fond memories.
I don't think about the accident. I think about what I was part of. A team of wonderful young, spirited players, great journalists, great staff. Everything was good about it.
Captain Thain's legacy is modern aviation's improved understanding of the deadly effects of slush.
The problem is tackled now, and I would suggest it was probably a direct result of the Munich accident. Airport authorities approached the problem very, very differently.
By what he did, forcing this issue, he's probably saved countless lives and prevented more than one Munich in that particular time. So in that sense, there is to be admired for what he did in those 11 years.
Mum was quoted as saying, "A man with greater integrity I will never know." But he also left an inscription for me in a book, which is the difference between the impossible and the possible is merely a measure of man's determination.
35,000 feet above the Bering Sea.
Anchorage, northwest 85.
Confirm that you are aware that we have declared an emergency.
A Boeing 747 is in serious trouble.
Can't do that. There's too much traffic.
We're calling this a red emergency.
Red emergency is preparing for the worst.
The crew can barely control the plane.
It was a very confusing situation. It was something that they had never done in training.
They need all the help they can get to have any hope of bringing the plane and its 386 passengers safely to the ground.
If there's ever going to be a time you fly the perfect approach, it's got to be this one.
Mayday, Mayday.
Northwest Airlines Flight 85 is making its way over the Bering Sea. It's after 5 p.m. Dinner service has ended, and passengers are settling in for a long flight. The massive Boeing 747-400 has just flown over Alaska and is now almost halfway through a 13.5-hour journey from Detroit to Japan's Narita Airport.
Hello, gentlemen. Frank, how are things?
25,000 feet.
Captain John Hansen is a career pilot. He's also a flight instructor for the Boeing 747. 6.5 hours into the flight, he's about to hand over the controls. On long journeys, it's common to have 2 flight crews.
The trip was long enough that we put on a full augmented crew. We had 2 captains and 2 co-pilots.
They fly in shifts to prevent fatigue.
Why don't you guys give me a ding about 20 minutes before you want me back up here, okay?
Mike Fagan, a Vietnam vet with 25 years flying experience, is the fresh first officer.
Everything was normal, and we didn't expect to have any problems. We've flown this flight many, many times.
Frank, I'm taking the lasagna. You get option B.
Does option B include starving?
He is joined by Captain Frank Guide, who has over 11,000 hours of flying under his belt. Pilots refer to this aircraft as the Queen of the Skies. It's equipped with a private cabin for the flight crew. Here, Captain Hansen and his first officer, David Smith, will have a 5-hour rest break before returning to the flight deck.
Dave Smith had worked with me, and we were going to read for a while, perhaps nap in the bunk, and wake up for descent to Tokyo.
You sure you're not hungry?
Trust me, I'm good.
Flight 85 is more than 6 hours from landing at Narita.
The aircraft took a dramatic roll to the left. It went from 35 through 40 degrees of bank.
For no apparent reason, the pilots have lost control of their plane.
The airplane took a lurch, like nothing I had ever felt before. And I kind of had to catch myself.
It was a very sudden yawing movement. It's the type of thing you only feel in a simulator when they're doing extreme things.
Captain Guide has only moments to react.
Did we lose an engine? Do we still have engines?
Still have all engines, that's not it.
The lives of 386 passengers hang in the balance.
The airplane was kind of shaking, and I knew the autopilot had been disconnected. It was quite obvious that something was abnormal.
In a matter of seconds, Captain Guide has disconnected the autopilot, pulled back on the control column, and leveled the wings. But something is still seriously wrong.
Frank, you got it?
Yeah, I think I've got it. If it's not the engines, then we have a problem with the rudder.
The pilots have leveled the plane, but they are still having difficulty controlling it. The warning system confirms Geib's suspicion.
Yaw damper lower.
A malfunction of the rudder system. The rudder controls the plane's yaw, its movements from left to right as it flies. It directs airflow to keep it flying straight. Less than a year earlier, American Airlines Flight 587 lost control of its rudder system and crashed into a neighborhood in Queens, New York, killing everyone on board.
We were very well aware of that, and there had been quite a study done on that. So we had actually just reviewed that event in flight planning.
This plane is in danger of suffering the same fate. Because of its size, the 747 has both an upper and lower rudder. They normally move in unison. For some unknown reason, the lower rudder has deflected 17 degrees to the left, and it's stuck there. The captain tries to keep the plane flying level and straight. He uses foot pedals to control the upper rudder, and the control column to move the ailerons. But he knows it's a stopgap measure that may not work for long.
I've got the airplane and the radios. You get the comm and see if there's a procedure for this.
The COM, or Cockpit Operating Manual, provides a list of procedures for emergency situations.
It says not to remove any pressure from the hydraulics, that's all.
That's not very helpful. Is there anything else? Are any other systems failing?
Not so far.
Hydraulics control several vital components, including the failed rudder. More failures could spell disaster.
How far to Narita?
About 6 hours.
Flying that far without full control of the plane is a huge risk.
P3, get them back.
When you're in the bunk, you're used to hearing the P3 only at times when it's time for a shift change. When you hear it at an odd time, it means come back, because something out of the ordinary has happened.
Anchorage is 2 hours behind us. Call them and declare an emergency. We're turning around.
Anchorage, this is Northwest 85.
But even contacting Anchorage is a problem.
Anchorage, this is Northwest 85.
Air traffic control centers have a limited range. In the middle of the sea between the two continents, the plane is in a dead zone. No one in Anchorage knows they're in trouble. In the cabin, passengers don't know the scale of the problem. Many passengers assume it was only turbulence that caused the sudden jolt.
See if you can reach 19.
The pilots attempt to contact another flight that's closer to Alaska.
Northwest 19, this is Northwest 85.
But the signal is weak.
Northwest 19, this is Northwest 85.
This is Northwest 19, go ahead.
We have an emergency on board. Can you relay to Anchorage?
Roger, stand by.
Okay, let's turn this around.
The plane goes into a very wide right turn.
Anchorage Control, this is Northwest 19. Northwest 19?
Go ahead.
Northwest 85 is requesting an emergency landing. What is the nature of the emergency? Hard over, left rudder.
The rudder is crucial for turning the plane around. Without it, the captain is forced to improvise.
We had no idea what the problem was. So Frank was very cautious on using the rudder, which means that he had to use full aileron to control the aircraft. But in the meantime, the aircraft is in a slip. And a slip is when the aircraft is not in a coordinated turn. The tail is off in one direction, the nose point in the other direction. In other words, it's a slip that goes like this.
Like a race car driver skidding through a turn, Captain Geib is close to losing control.
Let's move it. What's happening?
We've declared an emergency, and we're headed back to Anchorage.
Indications?
Lower rudder is hard over 17 degrees to the left. We don't know why, and it's not responding. We don't know what else is wrong yet.
It took both hands to fly the airplane. We didn't know at that point whether the rudder was coming apart. All we knew was it was definitely a rudder problem.
This has never happened before. The pilots haven't been trained for this malfunction.
There's no procedure in the comm.
And the manual is of no use.
Well, we're gonna have to make one up.
35,000 feet over the Bering Sea, and an hour and 40 minutes away from the nearest airport, the pilots of this massive 747 are in uncharted territory. For the 386 passengers on Flight 85, the anxiety over the sudden dive has subsided. No one in the cabin is aware of the potentially fatal drama still unfolding in the cockpit. Without full control of the plane's rudder, the crew needs to fly another 1,300 kilometers to Anchorage.
Frank was the junior captain, I was the senior captain. And when I saw him battling the controls, I decided that I was gonna take over.
Hey, Frank, you've done a hell of a job, but I think I better take over now. If anybody's gonna ding this thing up, it's gonna be me.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Okay, Mike, you're gonna have to take control while we switch over. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
First Officer Fagan must now hold the yoke steady as Captain Geib relinquishes control of the plane.
I have control.
Any mishandling of the controls could send the plane into a fatal spin. The same delicate balancing act transfers control of the plane to Captain Hansen.
I was pretty appalled at how much force it took to fly this big, beautiful airplane. If the airplane is flying, even lousy, it's flying. And that's the bottom line. And it's headed towards Anchorage. So we're good to go for a while. Now we could begin to devote some thought to other things that had to be done.
The crew has no idea how badly the rudder is damaged. It could be seconds from tearing off altogether.
They can't tell whether the damn rudder's trying to leave the airplane.
What do we tell the cabin?
We decided the passengers really should know, so we wanted a liaison with the cabin, and Frank offered to do that.
I'll go back and tell them. The more they know, the better.
I agree. I think we should tell them exactly what's going on.
Kathy, we don't know if things are going to get better or worse.
Every single crew member knew that something major had happened to that aircraft.
We've turned back to Anchorage and we're going to make an emergency landing.
The captain didn't try to hide anything, didn't try to pull any punches. He just flat out said how things were and that it could possibly be a very rough landing.
Kathy, we're calling this one a red emergency.
Red emergency is, of course, preparing for the worst. There may be a crash landing, there may be damage to the aircraft, there may be injury and or death to passengers and or yourself.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Captain Frank Geib. We are dealing with a malfunction at the moment, and our crew is dealing with the situation as best we can. We need everybody to remain calm. And please, give your flight attendants your complete attention. I cannot stress how important your complete cooperation will be in order for us to make it to the ground safely.
The passengers, for the most part, were fairly calm.
I promise I'll update you with any new information as it becomes available. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll talk to you later.
After a few minutes, you could hear some people crying a little bit. You could see people looking around. You could see fear.
We need to talk to SOC. We need suggestions.
We can reach them on HF.
The Systems Operations Center in Minnesota may be able to help. But to reach that far, the pilots must use high-frequency radio, which has a weak, intermittent signal.
HF radio is like when you were a kid and your best friend lived next door and you talked to him between your bedrooms with 2 Campbell soup cans with a string between them. About that level of sound quality is just awful.
And ask them to wake up John Doherty for us.
I was at home the night of the call, just relaxing after a day in the office, enjoying a movie, but I was on call. And those pagers would go off, and sure enough, it did.
John Doherty has worked with Captain Hansen for several years.
I knew John very well, so I had a face, a person, a pilot I knew very well in my mind's eye.
I knew John Doherty had a better knowledge of the 747-400 than anybody at Northwest.
But Captain Hansen has no idea when his friend's help might arrive. And keeping the huge aircraft flying level at 35,000 feet is becoming increasingly difficult.
The control wheel was shaking because the whole airplane was shaking.
He decides to descend to a lower altitude, where denser air will provide more lift.
You ready to do this? All set.
But with a crippled plane, this normally routine procedure will be another risky maneuver.
Okay. Let's go.
You want to do it very carefully. So they're handling the controls under this really unusual circumstance as carefully and gently and as delicately as they can.
How's it feel? About the same, not great.
We had to be very careful how we flew this airplane. The tail might be coming apart. The rudder might be just barely hanging on, or it could be a hydraulic problem.
28,000.
They make it down to 28,000 feet without further incident.
I think I got this here. Okay.
But the force required to fly the damaged aircraft has taken its toll on the captain.
John.
Yeah, my leg's starting to cramp up. I'm having a tough time holding this together.
The physical effort that was required was considerable. We were pushing so hard with our leg on that rudder pedal that we could only do it for about 10 minutes.
You're gonna have to take it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Nice and easy.
And then Mike would come in as I released.
It wanted to go back the other way. In other words, you had to make it go where you wanted it to go. And you have to use the cross control. So you're using the muscles in your shoulder and in your back, and we would lock our legs.
And then when I would release, I'd kind of get limbered up again.
Still more than an hour away from Anchorage, the flight attendants prepare the cabin for a red emergency.
We did what we were trained to do. It just kicked in, and you would make sure that everything on the counters is put away, make sure all the crew bags are stowed and where they should be. Everyone, to a person, cooperated with what we asked them to do. I remember coming to a family of 3, and they asked me if I was afraid. And I hate to admit it, but I did briefly consider lying. But then I decided that wasn't what I should do.
Yeah, I'm afraid too. But we have the best pilots.
Flight 85, we have John Doherty on the line.
Operations has finally been able to connect the pilots with John Doherty.
John, have you been briefed on this? You know what's happening up here?
Yes, I understand you have a control problem? ICAS is showing we have a hard over lower rudder.
They were facing really a very confusing situation. They knew they were confronted with something unique. It was something that they had never done in training, something they had never seen in training, nothing we'd ever talked about in ground schools.
Tom is not telling us much. We're
an hour out of Anchorage. What do you think?
Well, don't remove any power
from the hydraulics. But other than that...
And I knew from listening to John that what we had in the books wasn't going to be a help to him. There are going to be some circumstances where a pilot is going to have to figure out what to do on his or her own.
30 minutes pass before Northwest 85 is in range to talk to the Anchorage Control Center directly.
Northwest 85, we have you on the radar. Anchorage, Northwest 85, confirm
That you are aware that we have declared an emergency.
that you have emergency equipment standing by.
We will request runway.
The plane must fly over the Aleutian mountain range to reach Anchorage International Airport. The airport itself is also surrounded by mountains.
We said, okay, 6 right is the runway we want because it'll give us a 20-mile final, and it's a great runway with an ILS approach, and it's long.
Okay, 6 right it is. Let's make sure we get it right the first time.
As far as the missed approach is concerned, we're not going to do one. We're just going to do it right the first time. We're going to put it right on the spot.
There is no margin for error. The pilots know they have only one shot.
What do you think, Mike?
Maybe we should start configuring for landing early. Lower our altitude.
They're still 40 minutes away from Anchorage, but the pilots decide to configure for a landing. They want to see how it will affect their crippled plane. If something goes wrong, this may give them more room to recover.
Okay, we can take it over Cook Inlet, lower to 14,000, and then see what happens.
14,000 feet is a real nice intermediate altitude. It's good, thick air, and it's high enough yet that if something got worse and control deteriorated, you'd have room for a recovery.
This is Northwest 85. We would like to descend to
14,000 over Cook Inlet.
We can't do that. Lots of air traffic in that airspace.
The airspace over Cook Inlet is the busiest corridor in this part of the continent. If they lose control of the plane again, they could collide with another aircraft.
This is an emergency aircraft. This is the
Safest course of action. Okay, we'll clear everyone out of your way.
The jumbo jet slowly descends to 14,000 feet.
Okay. Flap 5.
Flap 5.
As he adds flaps, Captain Hansen can only hope the plane maintains stable flight. Next comes an even bigger test.
Gear down.
Gear down.
Lowering the massive landing gear will increase drag and reduce airspeed. The plane handles the new configuration without any problems. But there are new worries about the damaged rudder.
You feeling that?
Oh, yeah.
The rudder is tied to airspeed and altitude. The lower you get, the further the rudder goes out. So then it required more rudder, more aileron, and that was physically exhausting.
Mike, my leg's starting to cramp up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
John Doherty is still on the line to the crew. He offers a suggestion.
Have you considered adding
20 knots to your approach speed?
No, we hadn't thought about that.
We'll do it.
The extra speed may help make the plane more controllable.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're in for a bit of a rough landing. When we touch down, there's going to be quite a jolt. We'll tell you when to brace for impact.
As Northwest Airlines Flight 85 approaches Anchorage, the pilots and Doherty continue planning for an uncertain landing ahead.
We discussed how are things going to be as we fly the approach, what flight control, what management issues in terms of flight path we're going to encounter there, and then how are we going to manage directional control during the landing rollout, what stopping issues we're going to have, and so on.
The decisions they face in the next few moments will make the difference between life and death.
Okay, we can't do this anymore. Let's use the engines. Dave, get on the levers. 1 and 2 up, 3 and 4 down.
Just minutes from touchdown, the pilots increase power to the left engines while reducing power to the right. This uneven thrust should help keep it straight. But there is a danger. No one knows how badly damaged the rudder is. If it tears off while the engine thrust is uneven, the pilots will lose all control. On the ground, they are preparing for the worst.
Give $1,000 for a rearview mirror right now. John, what do you think?
Doherty has been scouring charts and manuals. He reminds the crew of another problem to consider.
On landing,
Don't forget the rudder's attached to the
nose steering.
And when that happens, Mike, I'll take the tiller and the brakes. You take the yoke.
Once the nose touches down, the damaged rudder may cause them to lose control of the plane at more than 300 kilometers an hour.
I flew the approach all the way down, and I thought, if there's ever going to be a time that you fly a perfect approach, it's got to be this one.
I became extraneous at that time, so somewhere along around 7,000 to 8,000 feet on the way down, I signed off with the crew.
I'll talk to you when you're on the ground.
We'll talk soon.
You know, I gave John whatever blessing I could give at the moment, probably understated in typical pilot fashion, and I was off the line and just waiting to hear what happened.
Between the frigid waters of Cook Inlet and the towering Alaskan mountains, Anchorage International Airport awaits the arrival of a stricken 747.
Northwest 85, we have you on our radar.
The passengers and crew of Northwest 85 are now moments away from an emergency landing.
As I was putting my own seatbelt on, I remember thinking to myself, is this all there is? As in, am I done here? Am I going to be alive when this is over? And I thought about my kids and my husband and my home.
Northwest 85, clear to land. Emergency equipment standing by.
Roger, cleared to land.
The crew still has no idea what will happen when the plane touches the ground.
There were close to 400 passengers in that airplane and a crew of 18, and some of them people that I knew personally, like John and the other pilots in the crew. So waiting was hard.
Okay, everyone, here we go.
Touchdown in 5.
Prepare for impact.
Brake! Brake! Brake!
Got it? I got it.
As planned, on touchdown, First Officer Fagan takes the control column. Captain Hansen guides the front wheels with the tiller. The timing is critical. One false step, and the plane could shoot off the runway.
We got it. Good job, Mike. Good job, guys. So what do we do for encore?
Not that.
Everyone in the cockpit was finally able to exhale, and we just went.
Once we were given the signal that it was okay,
Please remain seated until the seatbelt light is off.
I knew that I had to get up and go to that entry door and get these people out of this airplane. We did what we were trained to do. We did a great job.
Controllers can see what the pilots can't.
That's quite the rudder you got there. Must have been a hell of a ride.
Oh yeah, it was a real joyride.
Almost 2 hours after the emergency began at 35,000 feet, all 404 people on board are safely on the ground.
Well, when I heard the crew was safe, of course, it was an incredible sense of relief. These guys had been tested, and they'd done a fabulous job. So, you know, it was really joyful. I mean, a sense of grace, accomplishment, joy, satisfaction. It was all good.
The pilots have narrowly avoided a fatal crash. But what caused them to lose control in the first place is a question that desperately needs to be answered. Northwest is just one of many airlines flying the 747-400 every day. Thousands of passengers around the world now face a potential risk. Carolyn DeForge of the NTSB will oversee the investigation.
It appeared to be a very dramatic event, and it definitely seemed like something we needed to follow up on and try and understand what had happened.
Investigators immediately discover a trail of hydraulic fluid leaking from the back of the plane.
It was very surprising to us when we found out what type of failure had occurred and that the effects it had had on the aircraft's controllability.
The pilot's foot pedals are linked to the rudder through a hydraulic power control module, or PCM. When the pilot presses on the pedals, the PCM changes the hydraulic pressure, and that's what moves the rudder.
They opened up the access panels in the tail, and they noticed that the end cap on the control module had separated. The end cap is a circular piece about 2.5 inches in diameter, and it had completely fractured all of the way around its diameter and had then fallen off.
With the PCM broken, the pilots had no way to control the lower rudder. The failure of this one piece of engineering nearly brought down the entire plane. The power control module is shipped to the NTSB headquarters in Washington. Close examination reveals exactly how the failed part caused the rudder to jam.
When the end cap came off, it allowed a piston inside the module to move further than its design limit was intended, and that is what resulted in the rudder hardover.
But why the module's end cap failed in the first place is still a mystery.
It was certainly something that was not anticipated by the designers, and when we examined the hardware, it was definitely beyond the scope of what you normally encounter as an engineer when you're doing a failure investigation. Normally you see something that's an internal failure, not an actual mechanical failure of the housing itself.
Sylvie Dion is a metallurgist specializing in airplane components.
The manifold material was an aluminum alloy, which means that it's actually aluminum metal that's mixed in with a bit of copper, with magnesium, with zinc. And the purpose of adding these other elements is to make it stronger.
The aluminium alloy used to make this part is extremely resilient. It should never break apart like this.
Doing failure analyses like this on failed parts is a bit like being a detective, because you're looking for clues as to what caused the occurrence, what caused the material to fail.
The size and shape of the crack tells investigators that the module wore out over time, what's called metal fatigue. However, this is almost impossible for them to believe. A Boeing 747-400 is built for long hauls, 12 to 15-hour flights, and its parts are built to last decades.
My understanding was the mean time before failure for this item was something like 30,000 years, which is basically saying, well, we don't think this part was ever going to fail.
The 747-400 is in high demand. More of these massive planes are being manufactured every year, with the same control module that failed on Flight 85. If this crucial system is wearing out prematurely, investigators need to figure out why, before it leads to a fatal disaster.
The fact that this had a purely fatigue failure with no apparent origin to it such as a deficiency or a defect, made us question the material properties of the housing itself.
Investigators send the unit back to the manufacturer for extensive metallurgical testing.
Metals are made up of little crystals, which metallurgists call grains. And if the grains are too small or too large or not the correct shape, the material may have a different strength, different ductility, different resistance to propagation of a crack.
A visual examination of the metal provides no insight into why it failed.
One of the best techniques for revealing if a part contains cracks or surface defects is to use fluorescent dye inspection. The part is examined under UV light, and the defects will appear as bright lines or bright dots that are very visible.
But the exhaustive tests reveal that the material itself was not to blame. Investigators still can't explain the failure.
It was driving all of the group crazy. We were very frustrated when we realized that all of the paths we chased down didn't give you that aha, eureka moment.
Investigators wonder if something in this plane's history could have caused the module to break down prematurely. What the records reveal is surprising.
Northwest was the launch customer for the 747-400, and this one was the first in the line of 400s that Northwest flew. It was the oldest production 747-400 in the world.
And that's not all. Records also show that this very 747-400 was used as a test plane before it was even sold to the airline. Could rigorous testing have somehow led to the failure of the power control module? The plane had flown for 55,000 hours and taken off more than 7,000 times. That's more takeoffs and landings than most 747s with that number of hours in the air. This discovery leads the investigation in an entirely new direction.
We were concerned that it had been exposed to more stress than we had expected, and that may have caused it to fail.
Each time a plane takes off and lands, its systems are put through more stress than when it's simply flying through the air.
We were very concerned about those operators in Asia that use the 747-400 on short-haul flights.
This module, however, is already broken. There's no way to test it. Checking all the units on the rest of the fleet is not a practical option.
You would have essentially had to have grounded the fleet to remove all of the units.
As a preemptive strike against future failure, the NTSB recommends that airlines test the power control module more vigorously and more regularly.
We instituted a repetitive inspection cycle requirement.
But the root cause of the failure is never found. 4 years later, an Air France cargo plane is forced to make an emergency landing. Once again, the lower rudder has failed on the 747-400. The circumstances are strikingly similar to Northwest Flight 85.
The unit was sent to Parker Hannifin in California for repair, and when they opened the box and looked at it, their eyes got really big. They immediately quarantined it and called everyone and said, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what just showed up on our doorstep."
If the Air France module shows signs of metal fatigue like the one on Flight 85, then investigators may be a step closer to explaining the mysterious failures.
We immediately focused in on the fracture surface again in the same area and did many of the checks that we had done the first time around.
But this case seems to be different. There is no sign of fatigue. Instead, they find a manufacturing defect.
We actually found a deficiency in the bottom of the threaded bore section. We found a very sharp radius at the bottom of the threads, which is where the crack had propagated from.
While finding the cause of this latest failure is significant, it has done nothing to help explain the failure on the Northwest flight 4 years earlier.
Was it overloading? Was it a progressive failure? Was it exposed to something in the environment that caused it to fail?
Without knowing the why, you can't really take the appropriate corrective action. And as an investigator, that's frustrating.
For the second time, a part that was never meant to wear out has nearly brought down a 747. With one of the two near tragedies still unexplained, investigators desperately need to find a fail-safe measure that will protect passengers in the future.
Okay, everyone, here we go.
4 years after Flight 85's heart-stopping emergency landing in Anchorage, the cause of the 747's rudder failure is still unknown. Now the same part has failed on another flight. The next failure could be deadly.
We still don't know actually the root cause of the Northwest failure. But because of what we found with the second Air France failure, we needed to take corrective action to prevent similar failures from occurring.
Investigators recommend attaching special plugs to the control module. In the event of another failure, these new pieces will prevent the rudder from moving too far in either direction.
The changes that we've made to the control modules in the 747-400 fleet will prevent any future events of a rudder hardover.
An airworthiness directive from the FAA makes it mandatory for every 747-400 to be fitted with this new technology, eliminating the risk of another failure. But still, there is another question to consider. One investigators seldom have the luxury to contemplate. With a catastrophic failure of the rudder system, why didn't Flight 85 crash? One reason: the very design of this 747.
Having a split rudder is definitely an unusual feature of this airplane. And in this case, it worked in their favor in the sense that if there had only been one rudder and the actuator of that rudder had failed, then 100% of the yaw control would have been deflected, which would have magnified the problem.
But technology alone did not save 404 lives. In 1985, China Airlines Flight 006 also went into a sudden roll. But that flight plummeted nearly 30,000 feet before the pilots were able to regain control. How had Flight 85 escaped the same fate?
If Frank hadn't reacted the way he had, we probably would not be here to tell the story.
Frank, you got it?
Yes, I think I've got it.
Captain Geib's actions in the first few seconds were critical to saving the plane. But what got it safely to the ground is another story.
Every pilot in that cockpit knew what was going on. Risks were being assessed and so on.
On landing.
Don't forget the rudder's attached to the nose steering.
And when that happens, Mike, I'll take the tiller and the brakes, and you take the yoke.
Cockpit resource management is really what enabled us to think this thing through and get the airplane on the ground.
I am proud to say we were like a well-oiled machine. We all did what we were trained to do.
Touchdown in 5. Prepare for impact.
And not one single person fell apart.
What do we tell the captain?
Guys that we had in the cockpit were just tremendous. Everybody communicated.
I'll go back and tell them. The more they know, the better.
I agree. I think we should tell them exactly what's going on.
I think this crew did a phenomenal job in getting this aircraft back on the ground safely.
In 2003, the Airline Pilots Association awarded the crew of Northwest Airlines Flight 85 with the Superior Airmanship Award.
More important than the award was the fact that we got the people on the ground safely.
We got it.
In this day and age of automated cockpits, hand flying is in danger of becoming a lost art. We have to remember as pilots that we are there because of our flying skills. We had prepared so well for this thing that the failure was not an option.